Let's take a look at this process costing comprehensive problem using the weighted average process costing method. Sunspot Beverages Limited of Fiji makes blended tropical fruit drinks in 2 stages. Fruit juices are extracted from fresh fruits and then blended in the blending department. The blended juices are then bottled and packed for shipping in the bottling department. The following information pertains to the operations of the blending department for June. The currency in Fiji is the Fijian dollar. Assume that the company uses the weighted average method. Okay, so what we see on the screen here is we started off with 20,000 units in work in process, which were 100% complete as to material units and 75% complete with regard to the work in process we had of those 20,000 units. Okay, so it was 100,000 complete as to materials, but the work in process in the beginning was only 75% complete when we think about the labor and overhead or the conversion efforts applied to it. Okay, they had 180,000 started in production, they had 160 that were completed and transferred out during the month, and 40,000 work in process remained in ending inventory. And then we have the work in process dollar amounts given here. But we won't need that for Part 1. Part 1 says, determine the equivalent units for June for the blending department. And I think what I want to do is slide this up. If I can do this, slide this up so we can see all of it on the screen. And the equivalent units were 200,000 and the conversion were 170. And let me illustrate, let me slide this down and illustrate how we came up with that. Okay, if we look up here, we said what was transferred in, 160 in work in process, and ending was 40, so we've got 200,000 in total to account for. So 160,000 and 40,000 materials make up the equivalent units of production of 200,000. As to conversion, we know that we transferred to the next department 160,000 units, so it's 100% complete if we've transferred it. In other words, we've finished adding value through the labor and indirect costs that are applied to the inventory during during the blending department for the month of June. But conversion costs were only 10,000 units were complete because we had 40,000 units in ending inventory, but they were only 25% complete. So in terms of equivalent units, conversion units were equal to 170,000, and that takes care of requirement 1. Okay, now let's take a look at requirement 2, which says compute the cost per equivalent unit for the blending department. Round your answers to 2 decimal places and omit the $sign. Alright, let me get this out of the way. I think I'll slide this down again. And now that it won't get it out of the way. Let me put this back on the screen so you have that. Alright, so how did we come up with the numbers we get? Let me see if I can just move everything pretty tight here so we can see it all on the screen. Nope, I'm not going to be able to, so I'm going to slide a little bit. And now we can see everything on the screen. Alright, so what happens here? We know cost per equivalent unit is $1.80 and conversion is $1.55. Okay, well, we already computed the units earlier, and the units were 200,000 for materials and 170,000 for conversion. Now, they gave us total cost of 25,200 in beginning, plus they added 334,800, so we have a total of 360. Just right there you can see that. Then they gave us 24,800 beginning cost captured in work in process, and then we added 238,700. If we add those together, we get 263,500. So all we do is divide those total costs by the equivalent units using the weighted average method, and what we come up with is a cost per equivalent unit of $1.80 and $1.55. And that's requirement 2. Next, we tackle requirement 3, which says determine the total cost of ending work in process, and then determine the total cost of units transferred. I think that's to the next department. Let me get this out of the way, and we'll illustrate the answers and show how we get them. So let me jump up and hopefully we can see all of the calculations here. Alright, you should be able to see that on the screen now. Alright, well, cost of ending work in process was $72,000 as to materials $15,500 for a total $87,500. Well, how did we come up with that? Okay, well, the ending work in process in terms of equivalent units was given as 40,000. They gave us that number right there. So 40,000 times the $1.80, which we calculated earlier as the cost per equivalent unit, right? So that comes out to 40,000 times the $1.80 is 72,000, which is that value right there. With conversion, we had 10,000 in ending, and that would have been 40,000 that are times 25% complete. We calculated that early. 10,000 units times the cost per equivalent unit, the $1.55. We multiply the 10,000 times the 155. We come up with 15,500. That number goes there. Add those two across. We have 87,500 of cost of ending work in process. Then in terms of determining the total cost of units transferred to the bottling department, we take the 160,000 units that were transferred at the end of the period, and those were 100% complete, both materials to conversions. So we simply multiply the 160,000 times the cost per equivalent unit, which gets us 288,000 with materials and 248. We drop those in, add them across, we come up to 536,000, and that's how we get our answer to requirement 3.